Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kev Paul Show. I've got an interesting guest today. This is someone I've known for 20 years, David Grant. And David Grant was in the coastal town in England. And David's a photographer. David's worked on Wall Street for risk analysis firms in New York City. And so this is a little bit wild. So David is witnessing hundreds of orbs flying off the coast of England and also watching them morph into drones. Now, before we say this is ridiculous, there have been lots of people in New Jersey as well. Just after these events happened in England, there were lots of people in New Jersey witnessing the same thing. And I watched a video this morning of one guy. He clearly was an intelligent person. You could tell. I think he was telling the truth. He's saying he's got a drone himself. He knows a little bit about this stuff. And he was saying that these things are the size of an automobile. So that's what he was saying. Now, David, you've probably witnessed different things, I'm sure. But David, tell us about what you witnessed, and we can also share the video of what you witnessed as well. And you can kind of narrate what you were seeing. And of course, you were seeing it with the naked human eye, which is always better than a camera. So tell us what you witnessed. And if you want, I'll put on a video, whenever you.
Sure. Well, see, east coast of England. This is December and January. I was there visiting family, and it's an area called Essex, which is southeast England. It was on the coast, very close to another area called Suffolk. And I noticed in this town, is where my mother has her house, and I was noticing sort of a low-level flying, what I initially thought were aircraft, but I noticed they were very, very low, and they had navigation lights on, and it initially struck me. I remember thinking, well, that's really low. Should a plane be flying that low on the edge of the town? And then I live in New York. I'm visiting England. Then I realized, well, this kind of thing is also breaking over the states in New Jersey, New York State, other places.
Sure.
And what I did notice on the news when I did get to England is not too far from where I was staying, at least compared to the distances we have in the States. It was on the news of drones flying over big US air bases in England.
Sure.
Not too far from where I was.
Sure.
And I was thinking, well, maybe this is the same phenomena. Or maybe they're just low-flying airplanes. But I did notice, well, that's really bloody low. So anyway, I was spending time in this town, and then I just kept noticing them. And what I also noticed was well, okay, when a low-flying plane comes over, you hear it, right? Some of these things seem to be silent. And what I also started to think was, okay, well, look, where we were, you get very, very big storms and winds coming off the North Sea. Maybe I can't hear the audio because of winds or the weather. But the more time I started to go out and notice this, and it was only when the sun is fading, it comes up as you go into night, you see more of these. You don't see them during the day, which I was beginning to notice as well.
Sure.
And anyway, so I was noticing this phenomena and a little bit on the news. Now, in this town, there's a waterfront area where I took the video. That's a good half an hour walk from where my mother has her house. I'd start going down there. I like photography. You sometimes get beautiful sunsets there.
Yeah.
And so I go down there and I thought, well, I was noticing as I was walking down to the waterfront, I would see some of these drone-like things flying, which you see
I've got it on the screen now. I've got it on the screen right now.
And I was at this time I was struggling. It was so dark. I was struggling to get the camera to focus, and that was a little bit of a way from me over the water. So
I can see the lights flashing on this drone.
Well, yeah, they have
arms coming off. It lights are flashing at the end of the arms.
They have navigational lights. And so, again, it could be a little confusing. You think, well, maybe this is a low-flying plane. But I was noticing so many of them. And sometimes I could see 3 or 4 of them in the night. And now, this place is this is a small little town.
Yeah.
There isn't a commercial airport near there. So, okay, the question first was, well, are these drones? Are these airplanes? And then what would happen was I would go down to the waterfront, often looking for photographs of the, you get beautiful sunsets there. And I just kept noticing all this activity, and often they
Sure.
seem to be on some kind of regular flight pattern around
Sure.
the town, then over the
You
water.
think they're you think they so I'm a big believer, David. I trust your instincts. We all have instincts. And I think that you can kind of start guessing what it is, whether they're manned, whether they're automated, whether
Mm.
there's someone or something, a creature inside of this flying device flying it, or is it just an automated thing? I mean, what instincts did you have when you were witnessing this? What were your feelings inside of you?
Well, the first time I started to see these drone-like things, they seemed
Sure,
a little creepy.
sure.
Not. I didn't feel they were harmful, but when you see something regularly, or a
Mhm,
number of these things regularly, and often they're silent and they're just floating past, there's something a little eerie about them, a little off, you know.
sure.
But as I spent more time, and I was going down to the waterfront, and I spent quite a few evenings in the freezing cold down there after I finished my work, after I visited my mother, who's in care
Sure.
in that town. I started to see other things and orbs, and then there seemed to be a regular pattern of
Okay.
over the waterfront from the town, orbs which I was taking video of, and then they morph into these things. So it went from being a little eerie
Yep.
to downright strange,
Sure.
downright strange. And what I initially thought was maybe this was some very odd drone technology that is flying
Hmm.
around. Maybe it's government surveillance drones, something like that, which in its own right was a little eerie, and also brought more questions. Well, what are they? What on earth are they
Hmm.
doing, flying around this small little town? There's no defense base there. It's a little
Hmm.
shipbuilding town. Um, with all due respect to it, it's a lovely little place, but there's no big military facilities there.
Sure.
Why would you float? Maybe they're testing them. Maybe that's it. So I'm sorry, I'm putting my thoughts together here, but it went from, well, this is a little eerie and a little strange, to, well, what on earth is going on? If this is our government, I don't really like being observed by lots of drones,
Sure.
to then seeing a lot of orb activity that turns into these drones.
Yep.
And that really got strange. And then I actually had some experiences close up with the orbs. And then that then takes you into UFO questions, because the orbs that you'll see in other parts of the video, I don't think they're us. If they are us, Kevin,
Yep.
it's very, very strange technology,
You think
right?
it's not human technology?
I don't think so. I had a close up to the orb.
Yep.
It was pretty much the last day I was there, because I then, I was spending a lot of time going down there and observing all this activity, particularly the orb activity that's on the other side to the estuary of this little town.
Hmm.
Um, and one came close. I tried videoing one where it came close and it just disappeared. So I thought, okay, don't try any more video. And
Sure.
I'd already taken quite a bit of video at this point. But one of these orbs came close. I'm guessing, and this is a guess, it's
Hmm.
freezing cold. I've been out several hours. I'm guessing 20 to 30 feet ahead of me, and then 20 to 30 feet in height.
Yep.
And the orb was oscillating. And like this was shot on my cell phone very late at night. What you see there is an orb that has moved up, and this was pretty common. The orb moves up from the ground level. What you're seeing
Yep.
is a river in front of you, then you're seeing a landmass on the horizon above it. That's pretty
Sure.
much marshland and trees over there.
Hmm.
And I tried to zoom in, because that's a little bit of a way away. What you see rising above in the sky there is one of the
Hmm.
orbs, and they hover there for
Hmm.
some time, oscillating.
Sure.
Then you see navigation lights go on.
Sure.
And then they start to track a wide berth back over across the river and then across the town. You see there where the lights
Yeah.
are changing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, either this is a drone that is just has one light on and then it goes up into the sky and it changes its lights. But what
Yeah.
I saw close up was one of those orbs that had come across the river towards where I was standing.
Sure.
It came down a little bit towards where I was, and then it was oscillating there. And then I saw that's a
Okay.
navigation tower that's
David,
there for.
there's so much activity here. I mean, you must be confused which orb to focus on. There's orbs here, orbs there.
Well, I tell you another thing that happened
Yeah.
was as I started to see where all this activity. Now this was further down the river from the town. This was a good 40 minutes hike down the river.
Sure.
So what I noticed was at some point I would see several of these orbs up in the night. I would see some of the drones tracking a line back towards where this orb activity is.
Mm-hmm.
But at one point, and I think in some of the other video I sent you, you start to get a little bit of an idea. At one point, I saw, the moon was very bright.
Sure.
Now, it could be illumination from the moon, but at some point, there seemed to be more light, and I'm guessing it was for a brief second, split second even. There could have been 10 or 20 of these things up there.
Oh, goodness.
So what you're seeing is, or what I was realizing was, I'm seeing definite activity of orbs, drones, but then occasionally I would see more up there, and I'm realizing that a number of them are not illuminated. They're
This
either,
is so surreal. I think, I've followed the whole UFO thing.
yeah,
You and I were in New Hampshire, and Barney and Betty got abducted. You and I were
right.
swimming in a jacuzzi, like 100 yards where the most famous first abduction occurred in Lincoln, New Hampshire. I think it was 1960. Barney and Betty Hill, they got, they were analyzed by a psychiatrist and given hypnosis, and they recollected being abducted by a UFO. And I've got a crazy story. I have a friend of mine that is a naval captain for a major world navy on a big ship. He was the captain of one of my best friends. And he witnessed something come out of the water and fly away.
Right.
And this is a guy that has witnessed all sorts of rocket technology, ship technology, naval technology, captain of a major naval ship. And he said, Kevin, this technology was not human.
Yeah.
What you're saying, you think this stuff is so crazy, you're not even sure if it's human based.
You see that light that's on in the video right now?
Yep.
I saw this a couple of times, and it was moving around, and that's just marshland over there. Okay.
Sure.
When I first saw this light, I thought, well, maybe someone's walking their dog over there. And I remember thinking that's very brave of them, because there's marshland over there. The water was very high and it was freezing cold.
Yeah.
That light splits into two. Okay.
Sure.
Now, the first time I saw it split into two, I wasn't recording. And I was recording this for some time, and my hands were getting freezing. The next clip is after it is broken into two.
Yeah.
So 1 minute, and then now that's quite a way away, that light, and I noticed just how bright it was. It was initially just a small light flitting around.
Can you measure the size of these things? Do you have any idea how big these drones are? The orbs are probably small. Then they morph. Does it seem like the orb is smaller than the drone, then it morphs into something bigger, which is a drone?
Well, when I saw one come close, I'm really guessing here.
Sure.
Because it felt like everything went rather strange when it came close. But see, from that light there, I would have guessed. I initially thought, well, maybe someone's got some super powerful navigation light. But that light was flitting around at points. It goes on, it off, it changes location. Then it splits into two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I couldn't tell how big it was. But this is shot on a widescreen camera, and I couldn't tell, but it was powerful.
Yeah,
when
powerful.
The drones,
so the guy in New Jersey was clearly an intelligent guy, and he was saying he thought they were car-sized.
Well, the drones look like they're car-sized.
Did you have a personal experience where one was hovering over your head and seemed to identify you, and it seemed to be your little friend hovering over your head, looking down at you?
Well, this is where I saw one of these orbs come close.
Mm-hmm.
but I'm guessing it was, and I'm guessing 4 or 5 foot, or maybe a large bowling ball size. But then
Okay.
things got really strange
Okay.
because at one point it felt like I could see it close up, and then I could see what looked like a kind of, see in the video there, that's where it's split into two.
Oh,
I didn't catch it when it split because my hand was freezing. I stopped
okay.
recording, and then a few minutes later, it split into two. And I
Now,
thought,
would you
okay,
call this an orb splitting into two?
that's an orb that has
Okay.
split into two lights.
Okay.
Now, when I saw it close up, things got very strange, and it felt like I could see it close up. There was like a thin veneer of almost an
Sure.
amber color with two lights in it. And
Sure.
then I also saw something flying around it, and it was very hard to see in the dark, but it looked like a little gizmo
Okay.
that was spinning around it, and then it
Yep.
got very strange. And I checked myself. I felt like, oh my god, am I
You
okay
know,
here?
never in human history have we had this happening, where you have, people in New Jersey, people off the coast of England, all around the world seeing the same thing. I mean, for anyone to think that, oh, David's speculating and,
David's lost his mind.
I mean, I just Googled, you know, orbs turning into drones, and I found 100 articles of
Yeah.
this happening all over the world.
Well, absolutely. Because I'll be honest. When you're seeing these things, you keep double checking yourself.
Yeah.
What was, to be honest, it was so cold down there. The cold was, waking me up, and I'm thinking, am I okay here? I'm actually seeing this, but because it was so cold,
Yeah.
I couldn't help thinking, oh, right, no, I had the freezing cold to keep waking me up.
I'm putting
But
on the
sorry
other video now.
yeah.
I've got that up.
Yeah, yeah. You see here, this is across the river. Now that's a little bit of a way away, but you're seeing one of the lights. I think the light on the far right is a navigation light that comes
Okay.
on with
That's just
regularity.
a stable. That's not splitting into orbs
Yeah,
and drones.
but what you're seeing
Yeah.
above the, if you will, the horizon
Sure.
line there that's being illuminated by the moon.
Sure.
One of them has already risen up. There's another one flashing on and off to the left. Another one to
Sure.
the further left of that. So the one that came close to me was, imagine where that one has come up, and then it moves back across the river,
Yeah.
and then move down. And I saw at one point as well, 3 of these on my side of the river, moving as drones. They looked like they were smaller drones. They turned to an orb, they flashed, and then they went back to being a drone.
So it went into an orb. Did it go from drone to orb and back to drone? Is that what you're saying?
It looked like they were small drones. And then I was thinking, oh wow, they're low, they're on this side of the river, because I was going down this river a lot. Once I realized where they were all launching,
Yep.
so I went on a bit of an investigation.
Sure.
I would hike down here, but I was hoping to see them on this side of the river, and at one point I did.
Yep.
And then another point, one of them was coming over, and the one with the gizmo, I think it was a gizmo. And then I realized that changed into a drone, what seemed like a smaller drone. And then I realized there was another one not far behind it. And then they went up and they started following the trajectory that all the others seemed to follow. And the really weird thing is, the ones I would see in the sky looked like large drones, about the size of a small car, maybe bigger. There was one I would see that really looked bigger than that.
Sure.
So there was these car-sized drones. But then my experience down this river observing this is orbs that morph, orbs that split into two. Also, the orb that I saw seemed to turn into a drone, but not a car-sized drone, something smaller, and then it moved off.
Mhm.
So it got really, really strange. Now, if you see on the video here, you're starting to see quite a bit of activity.
Yeah.
This was quite common. Again, drones coming on and off amongst mainly marshland and trees. They move up slowly into the sky, then they change. And what was odd? There seemed to be just a pattern to this all. After observing it for a whole bunch of evenings, It
Yeah.
seemed like they were sentient. It seemed like there was a pattern. It was almost like they were reconnaissance drones.
Okay.
But to be honest, my personal experience, what really shocked me was this experience with orbs. The one that turned into two, it seemed like there was communication with it. The one that came close that I'm telling you about that turned into a drone,
Yeah.
it felt like one part of my brain was observing this, a little fearful. Um, and then the other side of me seemed to be locked into some, I'll be honest, very, very relaxed communication of some kind. It
Okay.
felt like this thing was reading me while I was watching it.
Okay.
It felt like honestly, it felt like part of the brain opens up and this thing is reading me.
You felt
And
like it could tell what you were thinking.
yeah, yeah.
You know, when
And I
it's like it's when someone's really understanding you, you kind of feel that emotionally. You know, when
yeah,
you're talking to another person, even a dog or a cat, um, and yeah, so you can tell when someone's understanding you. So you just
yeah,
had that sense that someone had is attached to you at the moment and
yeah,
understanding what you're thinking.
yeah. And
And
I'll be honest, part of me, part one side of the brain was thinking, am I okay here? I'm all the way down this estuary on a freezing cold night in England.
sure,
If anything happens to me, I'm on my own here. I'm a
yeah,
good 40, 50 minutes walk from the town.
sure,
It was bitter cold there. So
yeah,
the regular part of me, if you will, was really worried. I think if something happens to me here, this thing seems to be very, very smart.
sure.
Um, I'm a little helpless here.
Hmm.
And there was another side of me that thought, no, you're absolutely fine. And it felt like there was some communication. It felt like this thing was very, very, very intelligent.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, there might have been a little bit of practice with this. The orb that
Did you
turns into
perceive
two,
that this thing had a living creature in it, or was it just an artificial intelligence thing that could just, was it a living creature, do you think, inside of this thing that you
I,
felt could read you?
I felt that, to be honest, I didn't get the sense of like a little man or anything in it.
Sure.
I got the sense of something that almost is the technology of something very, very, very intelligent.
Okay.
So in some ways, this thing can morph,
Sure.
and I didn't get the sense of like an organic being in it, but I got the sense of matter
So,
that
so
can
can you
change.
tell us the difference between what you witnessed with your eyes compared to the camera? Because the camera is always a compromise. So
Yeah,
when you were seeing this, you were probably with your eyes working a lot better than what we see with the camera. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah,
You could see more
absolutely.
detail.
Yeah, see
They
what you're
weren't
seeing
making any noises. You didn't sense any sound.
silent,
Interesting.
absolutely
So,
silent.
so when you get silent, so obviously with a regular drone, you've got the you know the propellers keeping it in the air. So,
Yeah.
um, and I've been obsessed with a theory all of my life. I'll share this with you. You'll probably think I'm crazy, but everything can be reflected,
You
right?
should hear what I'm talking about. I'm the
So,
crazy one.
so sound can be reflected, light can be reflected, kinetic energy can be reflected. I throw a tennis ball against the wall and bounces back. That's basically reflection. So
Yeah,
everything can be reflected, right? Kinetic energy, light, sound, everything, every form of energy we know of. What if these technologies that you're witnessing are reflecting gravity and they can just hover indefinitely with no need for hardly any energy at all? And they're not making any noise because it's reflecting the gravity. So there's no need for propellers. There's no
yeah.
need for any high energy, disruptive, noisy element to keep this thing in the air because they're
Well,
reflecting gravity. By the way,
yeah,
no one really even understands what gravity even is.
yeah,
That's another
right.
thing. You get a bunch of scientists together when they talk about, oh, what is gravity? They'll just start speculating. It's all only speculation. We really don't understand what gravity is. But can gravity, as a force, as an energy, be reflected like every other form of energy we know of? Light,
Yeah,
sound, kinetic energy. So I just think it can.
yeah,
And
yeah.
this just came up spontaneously.
Yeah,
So do you
yeah.
want to talk about what's on the screen now?
Yeah, I think this is where I was trying to get a better bead on the actual drones.
Sure.
See, that one there is I think in the process of changing to a drone. So please excuse. I had my hands were freezing, and I had a long lens on it, and the light was really low. So I was trying to push the camera, and what you're seeing there is one that's been hovering,
Yeah.
and now it's fairly soon it's going to turn. And there's a
Sure.
few others in the sky there. And what you're seeing there is another one that's again following this trajectory. It's gone over the town, over the river, and they're almost like it seems like that area over there was their launching area, their main base of activities, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
And I was sort of fumbling around with very cold hands. And I think that one up there is already changing. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to track another one there or two. And you're seeing one there, it's already got some lights on.
Sure.
And so these things just morph. And
Yeah, they
like
kind of morph into something that wants to look like it's human technology. That's
yeah.
my gut is telling me they even have blinking lights sometimes. And maybe it is human technology, but it could be that they want to make it look like, hey, we're human technology.
Well, this crossed my mind of because as I was walking around the town,
Sure.
and I would see these things sort of fairly close to the town, and you know what really came into my mind is I'm thinking, is anyone else noticing this? Now in
He had a
that town,
conversation with someone and started showing him the drones, and he
well,
was
this is
shocked.
it. I was down the waterfront there, and now
Sure.
you get a lot of big weather there, a lot of mist, a lot of storms. It's freezing cold in England. It's Christmas.
Sure.
People just want to get inside and get warm.
So this was the
And
Christmas week that this all happened.
well, to be honest, this was fair bit of December and into January.
Okay. This past
But
fall,
but
2020.
what I was noticing was okay.
Mhm.
Well, before Christmas, we're in the Christmas season.
Sure.
Everyone's head down, wanting to get home. But I was thinking, aren't other people noticing this? Maybe just we just presume, oh, this is low flying air traffic.
Hmm.
And then I was down at the waterfront there. I had the camera that I was just using in the clip, and there was a chap there walking his dog.
Sure.
He says
And
to
you
me,
have
"You
to
get
make sure that you're not crazy. So you have to ask him if he's saying the same crazy. Are you seeing this crazy stuff I'm seeing? And to
well, this
tell
is
us
it
about this. This is an
because
amazing story. You already
this
told me
chap
the story, but share it with everyone else.
there's this chap's walking his German Shepherd. I'm fond of dogs. The dog saying hello, and the guy says to me, "Are you getting any good pictures?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." I said, "To be honest with you," I said, "though I'm visiting from New York," and this was
Sure.
funny because the guy said, "Well, that's funny." He says, "My son is a chef in New York,"
Sure.
and we got talking about where his son works and lives, and blah blah blah.
Sure.
And I said to him, I forget the guy's name, really friendly bloke. And I said, "Hey, listen," I said, I normally come down here shooting photos of the sunsets, etc.
Sure.
And I said, I'm seeing this strange stuff happening with lights in the sky that are turning into drones or something." And he says, "Yeah," he says, "I hear about that." He says, "I know there's this thing going on in the States,
Sure.
over in New Jersey." I said, "Well, listen," I said, I wasn't expecting it in this little town. But I said, and I pointed over just to where we've had it on the video, and it's quite away from there where we
Sure.
were. I said, "See that light going up there into the sky?" I said, "I'm seeing a lot of those, and I'm
Sure.
seeing very low flying aircraft all around this town."
Sure.
I said, and then he stops and he looks
Yeah.
and he says, "Bloody hell." He said, "You're right." He said, "Yeah." And I said, "No, is there any defense bases around here?"
Yeah.
And we had a really good chat about it because we're both watching in the distance these small lights coming up. And then I said, "Look, you're going to notice other lights coming around following it. Those are drones that are coming around the town over the water. And it's the thing I've been observing for a while." And this guy was really surprised.
Hmm.
And then we had now about 30 miles down that river, there's a large town called Colchester. They have a military barracks there for paratroopers.
Sure.
It's not an air base, and we both got into it. We said, "Well, do you think they have these drones? Are they testing them here?" And I said, "The weird thing is, it's all during the night. It's not during the day." And then
Sure.
he said, "It doesn't make sense that they would only be testing this stuff at night, and they're paratroopers down there. There's not an air base, and where that's launching is mainly marshland and trees." Now,
Sure.
maybe it is. Maybe it's a military exercise with a very strange technology.
Sure.
But when you're actually speaking to another fellow who lives there, and
I
he
do have a
himself,
family member that's in the Air Force, and he never told me anything, but he alluded to them having a lot of things that
right,
we don't know about without
yeah,
telling me anything. This was extremely high level security person in the Air Force at the highest level you can get
yeah,
in the Air Force, and he alluded to it through
mm,
innuendo that they have a lot of stuff we don't know about. So,
yeah,
and the other thing is, I've listened to Art Bell for years, and he was great. He had people talking about UFOs, and the most amazing thing would be the time travelers when they would interview a time traveler. But
right,
on a serious note, Art would talk to anybody, and it did seem like there was a pattern of UFOs at Air Force bases, especially Air Force bases that have nuclear weapons.
yeah,
And the fear of these aliens is that if we detonate nuclear weapons, it can cause damage to what they're doing and what they're working on. It's damaging to them terribly. So, and you mentioned that a little bit with the advanced nuclear weapons. If we detonate nuclear weapons, that
yeah.
it could be very disruptive to just about the universe in many ways.
Well, if we are not alone,
Yep.
it crossed my mind because, to be honest, when I was observing a lot of their stuff, it did cross my mind that not too far from
Sure.
where all of this footage was taken is some big Air Force bases we have in
Sure.
England. They're American Air Force bases or shared, but it's mainly
Sure.
American Air Force there. And a lot of the stuff that I initially saw on the news was around this
Mhm.
RAF Lakenheath, Mildenhall, one other. Now, this is, you're in Ukraine. There's a big war going on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
A lot of tension with Russia. It crossed my
Mhm.
mind that this activity is around US air bases. I'm wondering if they have nuclear weapons. I'm wondering if the heightened tension, we've all nearly gone to war
Sure.
over this,
Sure.
you know,
Um,
and and
so
and
I'm
you,
in
and you know,
Dnipro, and Russia launched a 6 warhead
yeah,
ICBM missile. It's the first time an ICBM missile had ever been launched in a war. And they
right, yeah,
launched an ICBM with 6 warheads. And the 6 warheads were not tipped, fortunately, with nuclear weapons, but they did blow up the missile factory here in Dnipro. Some of the missile factory. Uh, Dnipro
mm,
was during the Cold War. Most of the missiles were made here in Dnipro, Ukraine,
yeah,
for the Soviet Union. And there's the big factory, the missile factory, and that's what they blew up. They blew that up, luckily with conventionally tipped bombs.
yeah,
But this missile went up over, obviously, and released the 6 warheads. And the warheads, they seem to have been, effective in blowing up a whole bunch of things. It was so traumatic that I have a friend that I work with in an office in the center of the city. He was close to this. His home is close to this, where all this happened, all the
mm,
explosions. And he doesn't even want to go home now. He wants to
yeah,
just work 24 hours a day because he feels safer there than living close to this missile factory.
yeah,
So it's really he's traumatized. And I think he may never get over it. So it was terrible. He was very close to these things, thinking he was the next thing that was going to
yeah.
be blown up. So yeah, and it seems like if there is advanced life, maybe they don't want us. If we have a nuclear war, it's going to damage them as well. So
Well,
and this,
it could be that something is worried about us
yeah,
because we've come so close, like your poor friend who's been traumatized and thousands
exactly.
have lost their lives. And I mean, obviously, I remember checking in with you after that event, and it
Yeah,
struck me that then, before that moment, I think, the American and British missiles were launched from the Ukraine into Russian territory.
yes.
So we came rather close, possibly, to an all-out war with
Oh,
America,
absolutely.
Britain, and it could be that this, whatever I
And
was seeing, is worried about this or it's monitoring us.
I think you're right. There's a lot of worry. Um, I had something crazy happen yesterday in relation to this war.
Yeah.
I went inside. There's still one Russian church in the center of the city, and I went inside of the church, and it was the energy was overwhelming.
Right.
Um, I could sense that God was very angry.
Yeah.
From a religious perspective. I'm sorry, and my friend
Oh,
said the
yeah.
same thing. My
Yeah.
friend was with me, and he's not quite as religious as me. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to declare how religious somebody is,
Mm.
but I'm not that fanatical. I pray every day. If I don't pray, I feel disconnected from
Yeah.
God. But I'm not. I don't even go to church. I don't believe every word in the Bible is meant to be interpreted literally. But I went. The energy was overwhelming, and I
Yeah.
sense that God is extremely angry that Slavic Christian men are killing Slavic Christian men.
Yeah.
And when I went
Yeah.
outside, there was like a Christian guru type guy, and we were talking to him, and he was saying it's adno narod, which means it's one family at war with another, the same family within the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
Christian religion, because the
But,
difference between the Protestant Catholic Church, the Protestant, the not Protestant, it's the Slaviansky Church of Ukraine and the Slaviansky Church of Russia. They believe the same things. It's the
well,
Orthodox Church of Russia, Orthodox Church of Ukraine. What they believe is the same thing.
Well,
So
it's brother against brother.
exactly. I appreciate you getting to the point for me. And there's a lot of anger and a lot of frustration from a religious
Yeah.
perspective, from what God is thinking.
Well,
For people
I,
believe in God.
I tell you something that
Yeah,
also, like in connection to what you're saying and what I saw,
sure.
which you think are just not connected if you were the rationalist mind would say what's going on in the church you just talked about and what I was seeing off the coast of
Yeah,
England have nothing to do with each other. But one thing, I was telling you about the orb and I showed you the orb and it split into two.
sure.
What the first moment that I started to relax with this phenomena was I was watching this, it burst into this, very, very bright energy. And that shocked me.
Yeah.
And then I realized this was not some chap walking his dog in marshland.
So England's talking about bringing troops into Ukraine,
Yeah,
and
yeah. It's
and
getting
if that
very,
happens, you could easily see Kinsai missiles blowing up military installations in England, blowing up the British Navy,
yeah,
and things of that nature. So the rocket technology is so advanced that you don't see many airplanes flying around on the battlefield here in Ukraine,
yeah.
because you can shoot down a $10 million airplane with a $30,000 shoulder
That,
propelled guided missile.
that's
So,
right. And, and,
um,
and I think, sorry, just
yeah,
the spiritual aspect, the spiritualist
yeah.
thinking. When I saw this light go, I felt some connection, and I was checking myself, thinking, "Am I imagining this?"
I'm wondering if all this is connected. We're on the
Well,
verge of nuclear war.
yeah,
If Britain sends a lot of military stuff into Ukraine, it's
well,
if they do
we're on.
that, that's basically an act of war, and you could see them getting advanced level missiles, blowing up all sorts of stuff
Yeah,
in England, and now we're getting pretty close to World War III at that point.
very, very close. But sorry, the point I was making in connection to your visit to
Yeah,
the church was this thing. I had some connection with it, and
yeah,
then I started to see something go from my mind. And some of your viewers might think I've lost my mind on this, but this
sure.
happened, and I have to be honest about it. Is I saw some image go from my mind, and it looked like a picture of some kind of deity, Buddha perhaps.
Sure.
And then I was noticing, like one part of my mind is like, well, this is happening. This is very odd. Another part of the mind was just this image flew. And then at some point, it felt like there was this two-way communication. And then I saw another image. I saw another image of the Indian deity Ganesha,
Sure.
the elephant with the human sort of cross with the elephant. And one
Sure.
part of my mind is thinking, this is really odd. And
Mm-hmm.
another part of me just felt in a natural flow with it. And it felt like there was this back and forth with spiritual deities and I'm thinking, I'm doing this with a strange light that's beaming at me
Sure.
across the water. So on the one hand, there's the rationalist thinking, Dave, are you losing your mind? And there's another side to me that was completely relaxed, completely in
Sure.
tune. Now, I think that we have all the politics that are going on. No doubt we've been very, very close to all-out war. And it feels like something is coming
Well,
in.
I read a lot of the international journals on diplomacy and things of that nature, and there you can just Google winning a nuclear war, and there are people out there saying that we can win a nuclear war with Russia.
Yeah.
Russia has, in many ways, more advanced missile technology than the United States.
Mm.
We don't have hypersonic missiles in the United States. So, but the United States certainly has a lot of advanced missile technology, no doubt about it. But thinking that a nuclear war is winnable is asinine, in my opinion. I was mentored by John Galvin, who was the person that talked to Ronald Reagan initially about nuclear weapons and explained what a nuclear war would be like.
Mm.
And he said, well, that the Soviets might launch, 4 missiles, then we launch 4 missiles back, then they launch eight missiles, then we launch another 8 missiles. And we've only detonated less than 1% of our nuclear arsenal. And already General John Galvin, said, we basically, and I had a conversation with John Galvin myself, where I said, basically, if we had a very limited nuclear war where we launched 1% of our arsenal, the world is completely disrupted and in many ways destroyed the way we know it. And he said, Kevin, you're 100% correct.
Yeah.
So we have such a ridiculously large number of these weapons that just 1% of our arsenal would disrupt the world and change the world. Think of September 11th times 10,000.
Yeah.
The amount of that would be 1% of our nuclear arsenal would be the equivalent of 2,000 times the effect of 9/11.
Yeah. We're again maybe linking it to what we're talking about with strange phenomena.
Yeah, and that's triggering this. Maybe that's triggering these UFOs. They're nervous. They want to monitor what we're doing.
I can, if it's human technology, then okay, this is still very strange. But my gut feeling is a lot of this isn't human. From my personal experience.
Sure.
And the one thing that keeps coming to mind is what you and I are talking about. It could be, like you say, we only detonate a small proportion of the world's nuclear arsenal. It could be that the energy that releases smashes other things, maybe in other dimensions, because whatever this is, and I've seen it with my own eyes close up, it morphs, it changes. It's got different physics to us. And it could
also, in relation, we focus a lot on nuclear weapons, but we've had millions of rounds of artillery exploded 200 miles from where I'm sitting right now in Donbass. And I can drive my car and be there in 4 hours. And, think of the environmental effect of all of that, the heavy metals, the cadmium, the mercury, the lead, all of these toxic heavy metals that are in these bombs. You detonate, 10 million of them. What's the environmental effect of that? I can't believe the environmentalists in the world right now are completely brain dead and ignoring the environmental effect of this war. War is filthy for the environment. It's the most terrible thing human beings do to the environment is go to war.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? And I can't help thinking that the phenomena we're talking about seems to be ultra sensitive around, well, if you will, ultra intelligent, perhaps ultra sensitive.
Sure.
It could morph in and out with
energy, maybe into different dimensions, from one dimension into our dimension.
It seems so, but it makes me also think, and you were speaking about your friend and this war that's going on, including in the Middle East as well. There's the actual explosion of energy with the munitions that are being used. Sure. And I'm also wondering just the sheer amount of trauma and pain being caused as well.
I mean, I've been around a lot of Ukrainian soldiers. I've mentored and helped soldiers. I bought $5,000 worth of Kevlar for Ukrainian soldiers, and I got 2 letters and 1 personal thank you. that these people claim that the Kevlar I bought very early in the war, when Kevlar was not available, saved two soldiers' lives.
Yeah.
And another friend of mine was telling me, a helmet that I helped purchase saved his life. He got a
Yeah.
piece of shrapnel in the head that would have killed him. So, but I can't buy the whole world Kevlar. I feel terrible for the Russian soldiers. I think they're in a terrible situation. But of course, I'm here in Ukraine. I've got to be loyal to Ukraine. Russia invading Ukraine was completely illegal. But, there were huge blunders done by NATO, the American leadership, for the past 34 years that caused this war. So it's what we're saying is all related. It seems like we're changing the subject. We're talking about the Ukrainian war, but they're all related. There's so much going on in Great Britain where they're behaving as if they want to go to war with Russia. So this could all be connected. This whole thing, all of this.
It could be. And I've tried to talk myself, the rationalist mind again. I've tried to talk myself into thinking, well, maybe this is just military technology we're seeing, and some ultra smart technology, or it could be reverse engineered, as some people talk about, from alien technology. But to be honest with you, after what I saw, after over many nights of observing this, I can't help thinking that something else is coming in.
From an engineering perspective, I think they are reflecting gravity, because for it to be so quiet, even the people in New Jersey and the people I've seen interviewed in New Jersey, then they've got some of them with the very close up. You can see the mechanism of the actual drone, and it's not making any noise. So I think from an engineering perspective, how can it be so quiet? And I think that they're reflecting gravity. That's my assessment.
And how can one large light suddenly split into two? Quite separately, and you've got the video of the two moving, and they move quite far apart. And I've seen that a couple of times. So I don't think we have anything that suddenly splits into two and goes its separate ways. So in short, something else is going on. Something ultra intelligent, but also something very, very, very different. Very different. Maybe the US has something back engineered out of Roswell, or we've been developing it on our own. But quite frankly, something else is coming in.
Well, thanks so much, David, for sharing.
You're welcome, brother. You're welcome.
And it's really astounding. And we're just speculating. I'm here in Ukraine. Obviously, I'm very, and we talk about traumatic stress disorder. Even citizens here, myself included, have at least a little bit of traumatic stress disorder, because I do hear the explosions. And you never know if your apartment is next, your home is next.
Well, I've worried about you being there. I understand why you are.
I do have a friend of a friend that was vaporized. I don't think they even found the sneakers he was wearing when the missile hit where he was. So, it's terrible. And, it's just absurd what's happening. And we need very hyper-aggressive diplomacy to end this. And let's just hope for peace, pray for peace. And like I said, all of a sudden I'm changing the subject and I'm talking about Ukraine and taking away from what you're talking about. But I think we both know I'm not doing that. It seems like they might be connected.
Well, I think something, the thing we're talking about, the videos and what I've seen, what other people are seeing, I can't help thinking it is all connected. And I think it's quite possibly, I'm quite sure actually, that it's linked to the massive danger we're all in.
I love what you just said, this massive hyper danger that could be involved in other dimensions, and just think of all the animals on the planet when we have these huge forest fires in Los Angeles and throughout the world and in Canada. Think of all of the animals living in these forests that are being killed, incinerated. And it's just terrible. It's just horrible. And these terrible things, maybe these other beings are trying to stop us from being so incredibly destructive.
I think so. I think I got the sense that something likes us. Maybe something from another dimension, another reality that certainly is more advanced than us.
Sure. Sure.
Is coming in. It's always been here or
Yeah.
there, or but we seem to be at a point of great transition in the
Well, we
world.
talked about dimensions, and everyone thinks that these UFOs are from other galaxies and other planets, but there could be dimensions that they can come in and out of that we're not even aware of. They can come in into our dimension, we see them physically, then they can instantly leave, go to another dimension. There's so much about the universe we don't understand.
No, completely.
But you and I suspect that there's a lot more. We may not be the most advanced living species on planet Earth. There could be things here that don't want to hang around with us very much, that are more advanced than us. And they can come in and out of different dimensions. Who knows? What you're witnessing is amazing. Drones splitting into two drones and all of this is amazing. And the Foo Fighters in World War II, the pilots would go off. They'd have these things flying at 2,000 miles an hour around the airplane, almost as if they were playing with the pilots like little puppies and little kittens. But they could accelerate, and it looked like they could fly up to 2,000 miles an hour, and the pilots were assessing the speed of these Foo Fighters. And there were hundreds of pilots that saw these things.
Exactly. And so what I saw speaks to that, right?
Exactly. It could be Foo Fighter technology. Yeah. And suddenly I want to listen to the band Foo Fighters, by the way. But anyway, David, thank you so much. This is amazing. Right. And thanks for sharing the footage. And
you're welcome. Well, best of luck. God bless. And
you too.
I'll be in contact, okay?
I'd love to see if anyone comments on this, what they think it is, what they feel it is. Because there could be people that have video footage they could share with us. We might have a third person next time sharing his or her footage with us. But anyway, thank you so much. God bless.
All right, man.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Dave. Brother. Cheerio, bub.